Hello and welcome to episode number 93 of Daily Global Insights. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Joining me is Sridhar Chityala ji. Sridhar ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar, and wonderful to be back.
It is February 8th, 2021. We start with the US headlines. Trump impeachment defense to display timelines, images from the Capitol storming as the trial. So, this is very interesting that Trump is going to use the very footage that the Congress used to impeach him.
Well, I think that the Congress used it to impeach him without sign of dissent or without sign of any evidence. It is what you call as a herd mindset a trial process where you all kind of clap and say, okay, we all decide, he incited because there was this activity that took place and that probably resulted in the insurrection that happened. That's the word, insurrection, incitement and insurrection. Hence, we need to impeach him. So it went very much along the party lines, and quite a few people who, there's at least 10 Democrats who voted in favor of, Republicans who voted and said, it's impeachment. So they're going to use the same evidence and say, show me where it is. Now they get a chance to hear back.
Now, in fact, there are going to be shown some videos of Democrats actually inciting violence.
Well, there's videos that has appeared, and not videos that has appeared. These are explicit speeches of Maxine Waters, Schumer, Charles Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Cortez, and so on. Who are talking about why the world is not doing rise, rise, rise. Nancy Pelosi, you should be doing this, all that. So they're going to present that and say, should these four people be therefore be impeached as a result? Maybe they may turn the turner and say, maybe the four, amongst the four, who is the person who needs to be impeached? It could kind of turn up. So it'd be interesting to see. That's another evidence that's being presented.
And Alan Dershowitz, a very famous lawyer in the United States, has said that the Congress put itself above the law in Trump impeachment. Why does he say that?
He has been consistently saying that the House and has no mechanism under the Constitution to impeach a citizen. So President Trump is no longer the president. The impeachment per Constitution is for removing from office a sitting president. Hence, this is unconstitutional. There's no precedence. It is creating probably a very bad scenario where if you have the majorities and you have something to stand on, you could call anybody, any of the past presidents, any of the House members, anybody, because they're citizens now, right? Because they're no longer the immunity prevails as long as they're in the government. They're no longer in the government; they can be called and impeached.
Now, President Biden also says that the United States will not lift sanctions on Iran to get them to the negotiating table. What is there to negotiate now? This seems like a statement that doesn't lead anywhere.
Iran has been stating it has met its obligations. Under Trump, they have stated that they have not. There's enough evidence of the enrichment of uranium. There is also enough evidence of illegal oil transfer activity that is taking place. We ourselves reported the two tankers off the coast of Indonesia, which was arrested, and one happens to be Iranian
Iranian.
registered, and one happens to be Chinese registered. So I think that more sanctions were imposed. Also, their interference in Lebanon and potentially causing threat to Israel. That was also pointed out. You saw that there was a big ammunition dump that was taken out, devastating Lebanon to the extent Lebanon is today in crisis for some unknown reasons. So, not unknown reasons, but known reasons, but known unknown, which is namely what exactly is the political instability, why there's political instability, why the economy is now in tatters. So I think you can see that there is the hand. There was also a Soleimani footprint in Iraq. There was also Al Qaeda footprint, and they took out the number two Al Qaeda in Iran. So these were the activities that were going on, which meant that Iran has not let go of its ambitions, which is contrary to what they agreed and which is contrary to the world principles. So I think that is Trump's position leading in. Perhaps Biden is softening, and Iran is saying, let's shed Trump's policies. Let's kind of start while they have reached enrichment to their threshold of 20% plus. Israel has stated they're very close to a nuclear bomb and they may take deterrent actions before it's too late. So Iran is hoping that Biden will bring them back, and Biden and Iran's view is lift the sanctions, we'll negotiate. Biden is saying, no, we're not lifting sanctions. We should be discussing what's going on.
Now, President Biden also says that he is ending deals with some Central American countries as far as asylum is concerned. Now, we know that there is a caravan wending its way up to the United States. Does it have any significance with this?
Well, Biden passed an executive order which is, from zero tolerance to much more open and free borders. He also passed his executive order where there would be an asylum office and they would be treated with compassion. He also passed a resolution where families separated, which was the previous case, they would be considered. There was this Address Act. I don't know the full expansion of the Address Act, but it is something to do with the rehabilitation of all these minors who come in and who can potentially join the workforce later without having had the proper credentials or their background validated. So I think that these were the executive orders passed by Biden to eliminate. So what Trump's orders were is that anybody who is seeking asylum from these three countries must go back to their respective countries and seek asylum from their respective countries to be considered, like El Salvador, Honduras, or Guatemala. So I think Biden is saying that's gone. Now the new rules come into place.
Interesting. And the GOP senators, some of them have requested President Biden to keep the United States Embassy in Jerusalem. Is there any move afoot to change it?
Well, given the rate at which the executive orders are coming, which is exactly opposite policies to that of Trump, they're concerned that Biden may shut down the embassy in Jerusalem. So they're asking him to explicitly confirm that he is going to keep the embassy in Jerusalem.
Now, Twitter has permanently suspended Gateway Pundit's account, and Trump is also mulling starting his own social media platform. So a lot of things churn still happening in the social media sphere.
I think social media, in my view, is going to, if it is not already, it's well on its way to split itself into two platforms. One that are left-leaning platforms, and the one which, I won't use the word objective, but right-leaning platforms. Clearly, Gateway Pundit was not left-leaning, was not a centrist. It very much was carrying news and other things of the right, though objectively it may look good. Similarly, the objectively left views may look all right when you hear CNN or when you hear, CNBC or ABC, or whether you hear MSNBC, et cetera, et cetera. So therefore, I think that in my humble view, this is the beginning of the bifurcation journey that is likely to happen.
Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters are marching through the District of Columbia, DC, shouting, "Burn it down." Now, this was something that was attributed to the other side. So, what is going on?
Well, I think that there still seems to be dissatisfied. They say that the police atrocities as well as high-handedness continues. They can see more deaths. So they marched through the DC and shouting slogans, and obviously you have restaurants, eaters who sit outside and eat, and threatening them or potentially creating fear. Apparently, National Guard and police lined up in one single kind of a line, standing between the restaurant goers as well as the marchers. So There was also videos uploaded which shows some skirmishes between these protesters dressed in black with some flags with the police, DC police. But given the presence of National Guard and much higher alertness of the police, I don't think there were any major incidents. But it's a reflection that this has not died. I think Andy Ng has published a piece that this is not just a one off, but this is a very organized left wing movement, which is now spread across all over the country, but with deep footprint in Portland, Seattle, in some of the Western states. Western states.
Well, see, this is where the thing gets a little interesting. The people that they supported for coming to power are now in power, but the protests are not stopping. So it's going to be interesting to see what exactly their demands are and how this plays out. Certainly, unrest of any kind is not good. Let's take a quick look at global headlines. Myanmar sees its biggest protest since the 2007 uprising. Looks like the population has not liked what happened to Aung San Suu Kyi.
Well, there had always, she was a very popular leader. There was always the issues between her and the junta, especially around these Rohingyas and other issues that was going on, also around the broad kind of the economic policies. There's also been pressure from United Nations and some of the people the way these Rohingyas need to be dealt with. So there's a general unrest that was brewing and discontent between her and the junta. Eventually, resulted in she being overthrown and put behind bars, as well as taking over of the government, and they have declared martial law, or they have declared dictatorship for 1 year. That the Myanmar will be under the administration of the junta, going back to the old days. They have also, I heard, arrested the Australian advisor of Aung San Suu Kyi. So I think that they have that's also created some tremors amongst the people.
One of the US's newest destroyers, Rafael Peralta, has arrived in Yokosuka, Japan. So US is beginning to get active again in East China Sea, isn't it?
It is. East China and South China Sea. I think Biden is formulating his global policy around his military. There's the latest destroyer coming to Yokosuka is that's where the Seventh Fleet is also stationed. We also have Nimitz and Reagan in South China Sea. It's a reflection that there is a fear of the Chinese incursion. And there's also been, if you recall, we have reported here that Biden should not be repeating Obama 1, Obama 2 policies, blinking and potentially losing the territory and conceding, a very aggressive takeover of China by some of those contested areas in the South China Sea, particularly Philippines, Vietnam. We also saw, Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, and of course, Japan and Taiwan.
Now, a broken glacier has caused flooding, heavy damage to Rishiganga Tapovan power project in Chamoli in Uttarakhand. Looks like the deluge is now under control. How are things now?
I think the Delhi, it's very widely covered globally, this particular incident, because of the calamity and I'm told that it's nearly 150 deaths. When you look at all the reports and the video footage, it looks like the waters, it's a flash flood. The water seems to have receded, but created havoc, 150 people dead. Took out 3 bridges, which used by Indian Army or the military, raising speculation whether this was some kind of sabotage. It doesn't seem to be the case. It's just one of those flash floods which happens in that region. Once the project is complete, potential that such kind of damages may be mitigated. But certainly, I think that they seem to have brought it under control.
In the meantime, F-35 maker Lockheed Martin has signed an agreement with India's HAL to explore collaboration, and India seems to be working towards self-reliance in defense with all the supply chain disruptions that are happening. In fact, viewers, we are going to have a one-on-one exclusive with the subject matter specialist that will air in a few days. Stay tuned on that. Do you have anything to say about these two things, sir?
I think the only thing that I would say is that may have forgotten that the dilution of foreign equity contribution was increased from 49 to 74%. So, in other words, that more equity contribution and capital can come from the foreign manufacturers who are prepared to not only manufacture for India's use, but also they can potentially export the manufactured what you call, be it aircrafts or carriers, or be it type of ammunition, drones, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that India has recognized this in lieu of several threats that are emerging from China. So today, India has built a very resilient manufacturing industry, or continuing on the path towards building a very strong defense establishment, which would give it the opportunity not to be reliant on overseas exports or imports, but to be able to supply the domestic needs by itself. The COVID situation has only exacerbated that need, and they do not want supply chains to be disrupted. As a result, its defense being starved at the most inappropriate time.
United Arab Emirates has drastically cut Palestinian refugee funding amidst its historic peace deal with Israel. So this thing is now beginning to ripple and beginning to hurt few other countries. We will touch upon this in a little bit. Let's take a quick look at the COVID pandemic. Looks like the AstraZeneca vaccine is not that effective on the South African strain of the COVID virus, and some countries have halted it. Some countries are saying don't use this. What is the big picture? Can you share with us, like, what is the big picture on why AstraZeneca vaccine seems to be a little bit less effective?
Well, the only scientific conclusion that one can infer is that the stain has not been yet scaled, or the appropriate immunity protocol has been determined. So there was this even AstraZeneca in its initial manifestation. They said that they could use under emergency condition. It had reached a efficacy of about 65%, compared to, let's say, Moderna, or compared to Pfizer BioNTech, which were around the 90% plus, even Sputnik. So AstraZeneca is working its way through the process. There was this belief that it could also be used for the variant, and the initial research points out that it's probably close to 50% efficacy, or even less than 50% efficacy, in terms of dealing with this issue. That means you're going back to the lab and working your way. But it's a big news item, because this was one of the things that seems to be the augmentative vaccine that is to be used around the world, as the capacities are stretched for BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines.
And it appears that in Harbin City, the virus outbreak continues to worsen in China. We'll keep you posted on the developments there. And more importantly, now President Biden is saying that it is going to be a challenge to reach herd immunity by the end of summer. So this just tells us that there are many unknowns about this virus, and it is very, very foolhardy to say that a change in administration is going to make the virus go away. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think that my thoughts are, without sounding, I have to go and support here Mr. Donald J. Trump, which is everybody blamed Donald J. Trump. You did not wear the masks, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. You allowed this to control, you allowed this to expand, and you are killing people, etc. All kinds of things, were advocated. Now you're beginning to hear one after the other, these kinds of unfolding scenes. One is well, deaths are inevitable and we are marching our way. We could reach 600,000 deaths. Exactly 1 year ago, Dr. Fauci said United States will have about 100 to 150,000 deaths 1 year ago. Okay. So we are now about 400 and, 75,000 deaths very soon. We're not too far from hitting the 600,000. Second, we said, basically said, we'll have an orchestrated program and, vaccines in place and we will do a better job. Well, thanks to President Trump, he delivered his vaccines by November, when many people did not expect him to deliver. They thought it was all bogus, but he delivered the vaccines. So you are beginning to see, and then you heard another news item, which is some of these deaths were miscounted by at least one governor of a democratic state. So there is a lot of mismanagement issues that seems to be underway. And what is also frightening is there's pretty close to $300 billion set aside in stimulus programs, 1, 2, and 3. In the latest one, we got something close to $75 billion, which includes $20 billion for local COVID support and $50 billion for the vaccination programs. Concern is where is this money going, and why we are not able to mitigate. When you take India, in comparison, India has got what about 10, 11 million cases, of which 10.5 million cases have seen recoveries. There's 150,000 deaths and less than 150,000 active cases. Then you compare that to United States, where you have 27.6 million cases, only 17.3 million recoveries, and close to 10 million people still active, and 475,000 deaths. So it's an astonishing number, where the crowd and herd immunity seems to have been accomplished in India. We seem to be quite far away, and we are still fighting over masks here. Whether we should have one mask or two masks, whether fine should be imposed, this kinds of stuff. So clearly there's a problem. There is a significant problem in the United States. We still don't know what exactly is the reason behind this massive, massive outburst in the United States.
In markets and economy, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says that the United States could return to full employment if it passes the $1.9 trillion stimulus. I think that number is now drastically reduced, if I remember correctly, and even President Biden is negotiating that. Where do you think agreement will be reached?
I think right now, as we speak, we are still on that 1.9 trillion, sir. I don't believe that there were only resolutions and amendments passed, which basically reflects that this is not going to go into non-stimulus related programs such as overseas funding, such as abortions, those kinds of immigration control, etc., etc. So they wanted this to be directed across three specific segments. One, the direct payments and unemployment, or direct payments to taxpayers as well as to the unemployed people. The $1,400, there were some questions around whether it should go to all the people or whether it should go to people who are earning between 60 and or whatever, less than $150,000 of combined income, those who are above $150,000 not to be paid. So there seems to be some resolution around that. So close to $400 billion set aside for COVID-related programs and $450 billion set aside for community, local. That's very much seems to be on track. And on top of this, there is also from July 1st, there's another stimulus package that Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are looking at, which is to give this $250 per month, like a regular monthly payment to children those who have families with age 6 to 17 children, and those who have less than age 6 less than age 6 to be given $300. So there's a top up on top of that. Remember, there's also close to $400 billion which we have touched, unused capital preserved from CARES 2 and CARES 1 and the small business program extension that's still sitting with the treasury. It's accessible by way of credit to the small business. So there's significant amount of chunk of cash that's going in. To Janet Yellen's point, which is namely, there's some truth because she's going by the numbers that she saw, which we touted as a must need and well directed. The first $2.1 trillion stimulus, which bent the pandemic in a V-shaped recovery and brought the retail sales up. So unemployment is around less than 7% right now, or 7.2%. She believes this will help, and especially the PPP program will also help in terms of containing the markets and the recovery and the unemployment.
Lastly, India's foreign exchange reserves rise to 590 billion, and with an external debt at 554 billion, India now becomes a net creditor nation.
Indeed, I think that is a remarkable number. Just for people, in the last 1 year, India has added close to $100+ billion in its FX reserves. The three important things: one, it is self-reliant. Number two, in the event of any war or a contingency, it has the cash to meet. Now, I use the word simplistic, $600 billion. It's now able to meet its debt obligations at any given point of time, but also able to offer credit to somebody because it has excess cash sitting in its reserves. It's the first point. The second is that I had always maintained in the markets that when India is a $5 trillion economy, the reserves that it should have should be around 15%, which is around $750 billion as a contingent kind of a reserve to not only meet its any emergent needs, but also it's the right number for an economy of that size, because India is very heavily debt funded from inside rather than from outside. So it meets as it builds this $5 trillion economy. It seems to be well on its way, showing that the economic parameters don't seem to really match with a lot of the rhetoric that is going on, both on the media as well as some of the agitations in India.
That brings us to a close of today's episode. As always, we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. See you all, and namaskaram. Thank you, sir, for all your help. And as always, we will be back tomorrow talking about more breaking news.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day.